can see that the placenta brings food from the mother's blood to the embryo. Then it now takes excretory product from the embryo's blood into the mother's blood, so the mother can eliminate it. But that happens through the umbilical cord, and it's the umbilical cord that connects the mother and the baby, and that is why you have the navel of everybody. That's where the umbilical cord is. The portion where it is cut off from the mother, that is why you see everybody, every woman being has the navel. That's the point where the umbilical cord is. Then another function of the placenta is that it produces hormones which help the mother to adapt to pregnancy. You know, the other time I was saying that once fertilization occurs, there is no more production of egg by the ovary. The ovary stops producing egg because some hormones have told the body that no, there is a baby coming in the process, so there is no more egg that should be secreted for now. As the development proceeds, the embryo, now known as the fetus, becomes developed by protective fetal or embryonic membranes, and these membranes are first the amnion. Amnion is the innermost membrane that is filled with the amniotic fluid that cushions and protects the developing embryo from shaking, jarring, and desiccating. So it's like a liquid that surrounds the baby. It neutralizes the effect of changes of external temperature. It also acts as shock absorber for the baby. So it's like the liquid in which the baby grows. So it's not really affected, except it's a serious injury or accident before the baby gets touched in the womb of the mother. So it's one that ensures that protection for the baby, and it also acts as a shock absorber. But one thing, when the birth process is about to start, that is labor is about to start, the first thing that happens is that the amniotic fluid will drop, will flow out. So then the baby knows that now it's time to move. So the amniotic fluid is what the water sac, that's the amniotic sac now, is broken. Then the baby knows that, oh, it's time, because the baby cannot adapt to that environment anymore. Then the next embryonic membrane is the chorion. It forms the outermost membrane, enveloping all the membranes, absorbing oxygen through the porous shell. Then the allantois. The allantois aids respiration, nutrition, and excretion in developing embryo through allantoic blood vessels, supplying blood to the placenta. The yolk sac provides digested food for the developing embryo. On further development, an umbilical cord is formed, and it's the umbilical cord that attaches the embryo to the placenta. The blood of the mother and the fetus are separate, they do not mix. Now, we want to talk about development of new seed. Now, fertilization is the first thing I'll be talking about under that. And I'll be explaining the process of fertilization. Just as we have fertilization in animals, we have them in plants too. The pollen grains contains the male gametes, just as the sperm contains the male gametes in animal, and the ovary contains the female gametes in animal. So the pollen grain is one that contains the male gametes in plants. The ovules contains the female gametes. When pollination has been effected, that is, the pollen grain has been transferred to the ovules from the anther to the stigma. Now, when pollination has occurred, the pollen grain absorbs water from the sticky surface of the stigma and germinates. A pollen tube then emerges and grows down the style and ovary, feeding on the tissue of the style until it enters the ovum. Within each pollen grain, the haploid nucleus divides mitotically, that is by mitosis, into two nuclei. One of these is called the generative nucleus, which in turn divides into a pair of male gamete nuclei. The other is called the tube nucleus. The embryo sac in the ovule contains two nuclei, the female gamete and the secondary nucleus, or what is called the polar nuclei. The tip of the pollen tube bursts to release two male gametes when it enters the microfile of the ovule. One of the male nucleus from the pollen tube fuses with the ovum, that is the functional end, to form a duplex zygote which divides to form an embryo. The other male nucleus now fuses with the secondary nucleus to form an embryo. The other male nucleus fuses with the secondary nucleus to form a triploid or triple fusion nucleus known as the primary endosperm nucleus. The remaining cells eventually disintegrate. The two at the microphyle end are synergies, that is, they are non-functional ends. The three at the other end are called the antipodal cells and play little or no part in subsequent events. How does fruit and seed develop? The zygote now undergoes cell division and later goes into an embryo, while the primary endosperm nucleus forms a tissue called the endosperm and provides it with nourishment. When the food is stored outside the embryo and provides developing embryo with nourishment, it is described as endospermic. That is, when food is stored outside the embryo and it provides the developing embryo with nourishment, it's called endospermic. Such as we have in maize, we have in date palm, we have in castor plants, we have in onion. But when the food is stored in the cotyledon, it is non-endospermic. The food may be stored in the cotyledon, called non-endospermic, or it may be stored outside the embryo, called endospermic. An example of non-endospermic, we have bean seed, cowpea, cotyledon. We have that occurring in those seeds. Then the embryo becomes differentiated into radicle and plumule. The radicle is the young root, and that one goes downward, while the plumule is the young shoot. So when you have observed a germinating seed or a newly germinating seed, maybe after 2-3 days, you discover that the seed opens, and it opens this way. One goes down and the other goes up. So the radicle goes down, the plumule goes up. Then the ovules develop into the seed, and the integument becomes the seed coat. The outer and the inner integument becomes the testa and tegmen, respectively. Both layers of tarsa and tegmen are tough and protective, and is often lignified. The ovary develops into a fruit, and the fruit is one that protects the seed and aids its dispersal. Now, talking about germination of seed. Germination is the process during which the embryo in a seed develops into an independent seedling, with either a seed, one seedling or two seedlings, that is, one cotyledon or two cotyledons, when environmental conditions are favorable. The process by which an embryo in a seed develops into an independent seedling, with either one or two seedlings, when the environmental condition becomes favorable. That is what is called germination. And germination begins with the emergence of embryonic shoot. I said plumule and roots, which is the radicle. And plumule grows upward, radicle grows downward. Germination in which the cotyledon remains below the soil is called the hypogeu germination. There are types of germination. We have the hypogeu and the epigeu germination. In hypogeu germination, the cotyledon remains in the soil, in the ground. But in epigeu germination, you find the cotyledon being carried above the soil. So that is called the epigeu germination, above the soil, epigeu, then in the soil. That is hypogeu. An example of hypogeu plants that we have hypogeu germination, we have maize, we have sorghum. Their germination, the cotyledon is usually in the soil. But in epigeu germination, such as what we have in cowpea, the germination is above the soil. Conditions that are necessary for germination. First is sufficient water or moisture, and this is for metabolic reactions, activation of enzymes, and transport of nutrients to the growing point. Another factor that is necessary for germination is that the temperature should be optimum and suitable for favorable enzymatic activity. So the temperature should not be too high and too low for that kind of plant for it to germinate properly. Then another condition necessary for germination is adequate supply of oxygen for aerobic or cellular respiration to liberate the energy that is required. Then the last condition I'll be talking about is the viability of the seed. That is the potency of the seed, the ability of the seed to germinate. Some seeds are not viable. They have become dormant by reason of some environmental activity, or they've been kept for so long and they have become inactive in the process, and they can be made active anyway. Maybe because of their hard coat, the hard coat can be scratched so that water will be able to penetrate them. But viability of the seed is very important. If a seed is not viable, no matter the temperature, no matter the water and whatever, if the seed is not viable, then germination is not going to occur. So viability of the seed is important, as well as moisture, oxygen, temperature. They are very, very important for the germination of the plant or the seed. Now, I'll be talking about the classification of fruits. And fruits may be classified according to how well the ovary or the ovary wall, or what we call the pericarp, develops. How well the pericarp is called the ovary wall, how well it develops. And it's divided into two, considering how well, if you want to classify how well the pericarp develops, it's divided into two. That's the true fruits and the false fruits. And true fruit is formed solely from the ovary, because it's coming from the ovary, we call it the true fruit. But sometimes fruit is not formed from the ovary. When it is formed from calyx, corolla, receptacle, or gymnasium, we call it the false fruit. So the germination, or how well the ovary wall develops, is a way to classify them into two true fruits. That is, the fruit is formed solely from the ovary. But when it is formed from calyx, corolla, gymnasium, or receptacle, we call it a false fruit. Now, true fruits now may be simple fruit or maybe compound fruit. A simple fruit is formed from single monocarpous flower. That's the definition of a simple fruit, a fruit that is formed from a single monocarpous flower. Then the compound fruit is formed from a single apocarpous flower. So that's the difference. Now, a simple fruit can be dry or succulent. That is, when it is dry,